giving the U.S. greater access to Philippine bases.
The U.S. and Philippine troops
our commitment to the defense of the Philippines.
The Philippines, as a country located in the South China Sea, is probably the most important element of the U.S. strategy towards a potential U.S.-China conflict. The location of these islands, and therefore their geography and terrain conditions, make conducting activities supporting, for example, Taiwan or Japan, with South Korea from here, a brilliant strategic move. At the end of April 2023, Washington reached an agreement with the Philippine government on the use of 4 military bases in this archipelago. The 4 bases include 3 on the main island of Luzon and 1 in Palawan province in the South China Sea. The U.S. will now have access to a total of 9 military bases in the Philippines. 5 other locations have already been indicated. The new locations will strengthen interoperability between the U.S. and Philippine militaries while allowing for a more seamless joint response to a range of shared challenges in the Indo-Pacific region.
America's commitment to the defense of the Philippines is ironclad. Our alliance makes both of our democracies more secure and helps uphold a free and open Indo-Pacific. And today, we discussed ways to make this vital alliance even stronger. We talked about enhancing our mutual defense posture and strengthening our commitments under our mutual defense treaty. We discussed expanding the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, which allows our forces to operate together more efficiently from key sites across the Philippines. And we're pleased to announce today that President Marcos has approved 4 new EDCA locations. And that brings the total number of EDCA sites to 9.
If we look at the map, it turns out that the Philippines are not just some insignificant islands in the Pacific region. This is one of the most important places on the world map. The Australia-Japan trade corridor runs right next to it, and the island of Luzon is located in the immediate vicinity of the Asia-Europe-Middle East route. Goods transported there are worth approximately USD 5 trillion annually, and this is also where oil flows from Saudi Arabia to the Middle Kingdom, which is responsible for as much as 16% of all imports of this raw material. The ability of the United States to exercise control in such a strategic point is extremely important for global geopolitics. However, the Philippines would probably not have decided on such extensive cooperation with the United States if it were not for the conflict with China, which claims the rights to the territorial waters of the Philippines by creating its military bases there. This island state has said enough to China's ambitions, and this is a huge blow to the middle country, which increases tension in the South China Sea basin. Therefore, in today's material, we will check how important the Philippines could be in the event of a conflict over Taiwan, why cooperation with the U.S. may create a new Asian economic tiger, and how it will change the balance of power in the South China Sea. That's all in today's video. I invite you to watch it. The Philippines was a Spanish colony from the 16th century to 1898, but after the Spanish-American War in 1898, the United States took control of the Philippines as a protectorate territory. It was not until July 4th, 1946, that the Philippines gained full independence as a republic.
I am authorized and directed by the President of the United States to proclaim the independence of the Philippines as a separate and self-governing nation.
As a result, English is still one of the official languages of the Philippines, and the country itself has many American influences. A year later, in 1947, the Philippines signed an agreement guaranteeing the U.S. access to military bases in the archipelago, and in 1951, the two countries concluded a formal alliance. Until 1992, American troops were stationed at the Subic Bay and Clark bases, but with the end of the Cold War, there was no need to continue stationing American troops there. However, such a need returned in the early 21st century with the rise of China and tensions in the context of Taiwan. President Ferdinand Marcos, the son of the former dictator, clearly wants to strengthen his country's position towards China and strongly identifies himself with the U.S. in the U.S.-China rivalry, which is increasingly taking the form of a new Cold War conflict. He announced that he would not allow the sovereign rights of the Philippines to be trampled on the disputed areas. And it should be remembered that China did not recognize the judgment of the International Court of Justice, which found Chinese claims to a significant part of the South China Sea to be groundless.
Mr. President, how concerned are you with the continued provocation in the South China Sea
I'm
from
sorry?
China? How concerned are you with the continued provocation from China?
As
Regardless.
concerned as you could possibly be. It is one of the major issues that we have to face back home.
If you believe cooperation with the Vice President and President Biden will get you closer to protecting the region?
Well, cooperation with the United States certainly is just something that we are building upon that has been going on for many, many, many decades. And we just keep going.
If we look at the map, the conflict over maritime territory in this part of the world is extremely interesting. Each country has its own interests here. The Philippines considers its waters to extend to the line you see now, and China again considers the entire body of water to be its property. There are also Vietnam, Brunei, and Malaysia. Despite this, the most controversial is the actions of China, which is trying to consolidate its position in the region by building more artificial islands. Less than a year ago, Chinese structures and buildings were built on an artificial island on Mischief Reef, in the Spratlys group of islands in the South China Sea. China has fully militarized at least 3 of the several islands it has built in the disputed region. More precisely, they were built in the waters of the Philippines. But China nevertheless considers this problem to be negligible.
There's no reason for us to explain to the People's Republic of China, and there's also no reason for us to ask permission from them as to what types of materials are we going to bring on board. Because as I said, Ayungin Shoal is within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines.
Despite this, both sides often have incidents involving their own units. So while Manila tries to downplay this problem, in reality, the Philippines is afraid of China's growing power in the region. However, as long as there is Taiwan, the Chinese cannot afford more offensive actions. But if this island fell into the hands of Beijing, then the whole of Asia would feel the breath of the dangerous Chinese dragon. Hence, the Philippines and the United States live in a kind of symbiosis. Both sides need each other. The furthest base where the Americans have their units is Naval Base Camilo Osayas, Staana, Cagayan. The American Navy and air units are stationed there. It is located only 400 kilometers from the coast of Taiwan, so any support from the islanders from this location could come quite quickly. Taking a closer look at geography, the possibilities of expanding the American presence in the region are still enormous. Less than 150 kilometers from the borders of Taiwan, there is the Philippine island of Amianan, which at the moment is only a fishing village. However, in the example of Japan, the Americans often used places similar to this one to deploy their own military equipment. An example is Okinawa, which, together with the Philippine archipelago, forms a triangle of protection for Taiwan. The U.S. Department of Defense said in a statement on February 1st that there are currently approximately 500 American soldiers in the Philippines. The emergence of the United States will support long-term economic growth through foreign investment and job creation. While many Filipinos may welcome the U.S. presence as a strategic way to counter and contain Chinese influence and incursions, others may still fear the social implications of giving the U.S. military so much power on their soil, even more so given its prior history.
Our message here is to actually give out to the world that we should really oppose this ongoing EDCA and ongoing Balikatan exercises. We would like all peace-loving Filipinos to make a stand to not be one of the countries who are being exploited by the U.S.
The war games are intended to project U.S. power in Asia. It's not intended to defend the Philippines. It's not intended to help the Philippines modernize. It's really intended to showcase U.S. power, and it is a preparation for war.
Following the announcement of the New Deal, protesters gathered outside the Philippine military headquarters, expressing concern that the move unnecessarily puts the Philippines between two superpowers. Teddy Casino, former member of the Philippine House of Representatives and current quote, stated in an interview with Democracy Now!, the Filipinos do not need additional American troops and facilities in their own country. This will only serve to increase tensions in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. These arguments are easy to understand. The Philippines would have no chance in a potential clash with China, even despite the fact that the country is inhabited by as many as 113 million people, which is only 3 times less than in the USA. Despite this reality, the army at its disposal leaves much to be desired. According to the official data of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, in 2021, their army numbered only 100,000 units. For comparison, the Chinese have over 2 million soldiers, and military spending is a real abyss. Therefore, given China's actions in the South China Sea, the only country that can help the Philippines in this problem is the United States. And as I said earlier, these countries need this country to protect Taiwan, monitor the most important trade routes, and also provide a place for the potential transfer of troops also to Japan or South Korea in the event of a conflict on the Korean Peninsula. The so-called the Iron Alliance between the Philippines and the United States has helped ensure peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region, and Washington is committed to fulfilling its obligations to Manila under the Mutual Defense Treaty, said Daniel Kreitenbrink, a senior U.S. official. In short, if China decides to launch any form of attack on the areas under Manila's rule, the Americans are obliged, just like in the case of NATO, to provide assistance to the Philippines. This move primarily means that China can no longer feel as confident as before in the South China Sea, and this postpones a potential threat to both sides in time, perhaps even neutralizing it. What is also important is that while access to new bases and expanded military cooperation between the Philippines and the United States made headlines, an entirely different area of partnership is an overlooked topic. Specifically, we are talking about the economic component, namely cooperation in the processing of critical minerals and green mining.
We're deepening our economic cooperation, which is going to continue to deepen. I think it's mutually beneficial. And we're going to announce that, we're going to announce today that I'm sending a first-of-its-kind presidential trade and investment mission to the Philippines. We talked about that very briefly up in New York. And the United States also remains ironclad in our commitment to the defense of the Philippines, including the South China Sea, and we're going to continue to support the Philippines' military modernization goals. Mr. President, our countries not only share a strong partnership, we share a deep friendship, one that has been enriched by millions of Filipino Americans in the communities all across the United States.
The Philippines has great ambitions to take advantage of the global boom in electric vehicles. With 9 million hectares of land with high mineral potential, achieving this goal is not a pipe dream. Government estimates indicate that less than 5% of all available mineral resources have been extracted to date. The country is already the world's second largest nickel producer and 4th largest cobalt producer after Indonesia. Nickel and cobalt are among the key minerals for the modern technological world and the clean energy transition. If we look at the GDP per inhabitant of the Philippines, it turns out that it reaches the level of USD 3.5 thousand, which is a good result considering the level from which this country started just over 30 years ago. Now, the Philippines is being considered as the next Asian economic tiger. The American presence will increase foreign investments in this island country and will also keep China in check in raw material geopolitics.
Nasa kabilang panig sila ng daigdig eh. Anong pakialam nila dapat dito? Wala sila dapat pakialam dito.
Ito po ay isang gera hindi na matutupad sa US. Ito po ay isang gera na hindi mangyayari dito sa China. Ang gera pong ito ay mangyayari sa Pilipinas.
如果美方不踩刹车，继续沿着错误的道路狂飙下去，脱轨翻车，陷入对抗冲突。
Even though the Philippines is ruled by Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who is the country's dictator, he is still a man who, together with his father, lifted the Filipinos out of poverty. Manila, as the capital, is currently an example of one of the fastest growing cities in Asia, and now this process may accelerate even further. At the moment, The Filipinos have chosen the Americans and are unlikely to change their views due to the expansionary policy of China, which considers the Philippines' move controversial. Regardless, such a military alliance certainly strengthens U.S. partners in Asia and makes a potential attack on Taiwan much more complicated and costly. We will probably find out in the coming years what the future of this region will be, but that's it for today. I invite you to discuss it in the comments. Take care, thanks and bye.